Strategies for positive discipline. We're not going to beat children. I'm sorry, Whitney. You don't get to beat children.
One last comment on the last one.
The world.
I got some clarification. If you take any abuse to your supervisor and you are over 18 and they decide that it doesn't warrant reporting, but you still feel that it does, you are required by law to still report. So if you are over 18 and your supervisor isn't going to take any action, you still need to go ahead and report that if you feel that it warrants reporting.
What if
We are.
the boss?
Okay.
Ashlyn's kind of coming out of it, but she doesn't want to miss anything important.
How to appropriately discipline students.
That's something you don't want to joke about.
I would definitely like her to be here for
Yeah,
that.
she just had 3 seizures, and so she's coming out of it.
Whenever. She can also come just like
don't feel safe
chill
Caleb,
and
you
lay
gotta
right
come
here
down.
if she
don't
wants.
feel safe coming to me
But-
because I'm abusing you guys.
I've hauled her up and downstairs before. If she wants me to, I'll go grab her.
All right, Jackson, we recording? Perfect.
Okay, let's get started. I like this one. I'm really excited. This is the core of what we do. This is helping them improve their behavior is the key to what we do for them, if you think about it, right? We're trying to help them become more enthusiastic, positive, kind, respectful, disciplined, motivated people. And so the way we react to the behaviors that don't work out well is the most important part of what we do, okay? So successful student discipline encourages positive behavior, right? We've talked about this, where if you have kids that are starting to get rowdy in class, what do you do to the kid next to them? You spotlight the good behavior, right? You highlight what is happening well. Or if a kid just hasn't had a win that day, find something for them to win with so they can start building some positive momentum. We also need to set clear guidelines, and we need to make sure that everyone understands. This is why we pre-frame the class, we pre-frame every activity, and if we need to, we reframe what's going on. We reiterate what we are expecting, both activity-wise, but also behavior-wise, okay? Rules and rewards, it needs to be consistent. They need to understand what's going on in class, what they're going to get, what the opportunity is, the why. And the consequences need to be fair. You can't burn someone's little child's life down over here and then let it slide for the same behavior with another kid, right? We just need to be consistent. All right, what methods can lead students to success? So this is not going to be me preaching at you. This is going to be a discussion, this whole conversation, okay? So let's move into it and talk about the various opportunities.
And we have 2 mics. We'd love to pass these around if you've got things to say, so it'll pick up on the recording.
Okay, so let's go to the next slide, Jennifer. And there we go. Okay, positive discipline. The behavior, distinguishing between identity and behavior. I want to make sure that when we discipline a kid, we are not telling this kid that they are bad, that they are naughty, that they are mean, that they are out of control. I want to address the behavior. Can you guys give me an example of what I'm talking about with that? Jaden, what do you think?
Instead of so instead of like if a kid is being super like easily distracted that day, instead of being, hey, you're doing that. You need to focus. Say, hey, I notice we're a little distracted today. Let's try to bring it back in.
Okay. You highlight the thing that is happening instead of the kid, and then we try and work on a solution for them. Does that make sense? Okay. Rules. Oh, and then teach them how to correct a mistake. So how would you correct that mistake in the example Jaden just gave? I see you're a little distracted today. What would you do?
I want you to be focused on keeping your eyes on the instructor and following along the best you can while we're doing the lesson.
Can you do that for me? That's pretty easy. Does that make sense? We're redirecting to a new behavior. Rules. Keep them simple and specific. Weapons are for training. Don't hit your partner with your bow. Is that clear? Do we understand that?
Yes.
Okay. They should all understand that. But if it's more complicated and you wax eloquent for 3 minutes, the message gets lost sometimes. So when you are giving rules, make them very clear. If you get hit with a dodgeball, you have to come sit by me. Okay, keep it nice and simple. Expectations. Keep expectations developmentally appropriate for their age. Don't expect 3-year-olds to hold still and pay attention for a long time. We're not going to have a form performance where every little ninja gets up individually for 20 minutes and performs a form while the other ones have to sit. Does that make sense? We got to make sure that the class is setting them up for success so that we don't have to go back and address behavior over and over and over again, knowing full well that behavior was going to happen from the get-go. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And consequences, I want to ease into the consequences. And really there's going to be kind of an arms race, an escalation of destruction for these children, right? You know what I'm talking about? First, we talk to them about it. We try to address the behavior. If it doesn't get better, then we add a consequence. But we need to have those warnings and those conversations before we just go, you're out of class, you're done, I don't ever see you again, you're, ugh. I don't want to do that. Does that make sense? There is a point at which you need to do that. If we're smacking kids with bow staffs and we've been told 2 times, 3 times, there is a time we have to draw the line. Otherwise, what happens?
They think it's okay.
They think it's okay, but maybe so do 9 other children think they can get away with that. Does that make sense? So setting those consequences and make sure they're clearly defined before the behavior happens. So if it's bow staff class, you say, okay, remember, we're going to train bow. I need everyone to spread out and be very careful about not hitting your partner with your bow. Understood? Let's do this thing so that we have set the expectation, and if we have to, we'll deliver a consequence in that explanation. I would prefer we don't need to do that, and that should be implied. But if we need to, if we know we have a particularly interesting individual in class who frequently disobeys, that would be okay.
I made the mistake one time in a 5 to 6 year old class to have them punch towards each other. I did very clearly say, don't punch each other. And we had one student, his name is Blasius, and he's actually gotten a lot better. And I have since learned from this mistake, who, when he heard don't punch your partner, only heard punch your partner.
Yeah.
And so he starts punching his partner, and I come over and I'm like, oh, Blasius, we're not hitting each other. And then he steps back, and then I come back later. He's hitting his partner. Blasius, we're not hitting each other, sir. I need you to stop hitting your partner. And I come back 5 minutes later, and he's still hitting his partner. And I say, Blasius, if you hit your partner one more time, I'm going to have you go take a seat in the chairs with mom and dad. I really need you to be careful, because I'd already had that conversation with him 3 times.
So maybe there was a better way of setting the expectation so he didn't ever hear hit your partner. Maybe it could have been keep your hands to yourself. Or
yeah, especially in a 5 to 6 year old class. And then right after I said that, he looked at me and went, punch his partner. And so I had him go sit down with dad.
Oh boy, yeah.
And that's
that point at which we
and
have
he's never done anything like that since. But
okay.
I could have done a better job in the 5 to 6 year old
For sure. Wait, Nate, for the mic.
One of the best ways that I've learned through setting clear expectations, because I've had this similar issue where I'll go, don't do this, and then the drill's like long or complicated in that small part where we're just facing each other, get popped in the face by accident, and all I had to do was just make it a more clear demo with my instructors. So sometimes when you set up a drill, it's like, hey Jaden, let's do this drill real fast. Like I try to make it a point every time to demonstrate the drill. Yeah. With the technique that we want to see, and then the kids go, oh yeah, don't hit my neighbor, okay. And then they see it, and then they're like, okay, cool.
Absolutely. Okay.
One thing that we implemented in Kaysville with one of our students, because he was very consistently misbehaving and we didn't have the right tools to deal with it as an instructional team, is something called the 1, 2, 3 rule. And this one kind of hits all of the things on there are clearly set expectations of you can't do these things or you get a strike, and then the consequence then follows, and then the consequences wrap up if we're not fixing the problem, right? So now all we have to do with the student is if he's misbehaving or he's talking when he's not supposed to, or he tries to throw something, we look at him and we say, that's 1. And he goes,
yeah.
He's only.
So Zudi's saying that he's wrapped all of these into one little magical special package just for that one kid, where we don't necessarily need to have this whole this whole debate every class with the whole class, because most of them conform to the required expectations.
Right.
But for that one particular child, he needs a special set of rules and expectations to address a certain behavior. And so he has a very clear understanding of the consequences. And it's helped a lot,
It has
right?
helped a ton. And he's only ever gotten to 3 one time. And he bawled his eyes out and he was like, I failed you. I'm so sorry. And he's been really good on top of it ever since. And I think that if I hadn't had taken the time to set very clear expectations, very clear consequences, he might not even be training as a student anymore. It got to that point almost.
Yeah.
I'm glad that it was that
Yeah.
opportunity.
Jaden.
Yes. I just have a question.
Yeah.
You
Wait for
Edit out that. Just edit that out. Yeah, that's fine. What do we do about the children who don't speak English very well?
I have a hard time with this one because if they're unable to be a contributing member of the class effectively, it's really difficult for you guys. And I've had students that speak Spanish, and I speak Spanish, but the problem with that is I'm trying to do this group thing, and we build an expectation of special, they get special attention because now I'm going to translate to a different language.
Demos are really good.
I think,
I'm talking about
but it's the behavior.
the consequences.
Yeah, and
like they don't understand because you say this.
I don't know that I have a really good answer for you, because when you are trying to explain a consequence to a kid, you need to be very clear and you need to be very concise, and that's very difficult if this is half understood and translated poorly through their understanding. I don't really have a good answer for you. I would be very cautious, guys, about promising and enrolling people who don't know what's going on.
Just carry a chunk around.
A sandal works, okay. No, it's just that is a very good question, and I would just say, like Clarissa said, you need to be demonstrating. So if it's he hit a kid, you just do like no way, or you're going to go sit out, and you need to start using your nonverbal communication as much as possible.
Right.
That's all I've got for you, honestly.
It's built in to pre-frame demo detail. Oh, yeah, I guess I probably got it. Nice. It's built into pre-frame demo detail drill. If you pre-frame properly and demo the drill well, using your correct martial arts skills and emphasizing the fact with your facial expressions, like your physiology and physiognomy, just like we're talking about in today's leadership team theme, it should be relatively clear the expectation is to not hit each other, especially for like 7 and above. If I demonstrate that I'm going to punch Seth about this far away from his face and never get that much closer, then using his eyes, and if he's staying focused, he should be able to understand that. And then we're not really having to get to the consequences. Now, I don't know what to do if he does start hitting students. I don't speak Spanish, but
Does each location have at least
So with that kid,
I'm sorry, I signed up one person.
Yeah, that parent, we try to communicate the best we can, but it's okay. It's all right.
working so far.
It's okay.
I mean, the nice thing about, I don't know if Apple has this to not take a dump on Apple, but Samsung has live audio translation from language to language now. So you can use that.
You can now talk into most phones, and
It's so cool.
It will verbally speak it back out in their.
So I've tried that, but with Russell, the kid who's 5 does not speak English and will rampage around the class. 2 things are going to happen. I'm going to let him get hit by a kid with a roundhouse when he's running across the mat, because he needs to learn. No, don't just run. Don't touch the hot stove as he gets kicked. But the other one is, if they have siblings, I will ask the siblings, "Can you help your brother out?" And I've noticed some good responses from that.
So,
Anyways,
I thought you were
but-
gonna throw her over.
Grace, you had something.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to listen because you guys are all going to deal with this. It's open.
Grace had a comment.
I just wanted to ask, what do you do with a kid that you don't know if they just don't understand or if they're just being naughty? Like with the kid Nate mentioned, it's hard for me to know if he just doesn't understand, because his siblings and his mom is yelling at him in Spanish, but he's just not. He's just being naughty. And so, how do you deal with that?
He knows a little bit of English. I know he knows it, and I think he's using it to his advantage. I go, get back here. Yeah.
Honestly, okay, so just from my experience with my own children, that's my spot. Come stand next to me, but that's okay. So I'm being blinded. I can't see anyone.
That is looking at him. It's
they know when you start doing the don't do that. That is not okay. You can communicate a lot of stuff with a 7-year-old kid without saying one word.
everybody knows the dad look.
I would argue that you could have that conversation as long as you are making sure your body language agrees with what you're saying. I don't know.
In the case of Syracuse and Bountiful, like you can pull the speak Spanish.
Have Braxton or Bryce come have that conversation with, like, come out there and be like, Olo mato.
Yes.
No, I'm just kidding. The German kids, those many German.
I downloaded Duolingo so I could kind of learn.
No, I'm just saying, like,
come here.
You're not going to run into this so much. Like, do your best. There's your answer. I'm sorry.
Hi, Tanner.
Or have Bryce come talk to him. Or have Bryce bring the parents and have a whole conversation with them.
With this particular family, I made the kid clear that he had like the 3 strikes.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, that's 1, right? No more, and then so forth. And so the last time, I'm like, okay, we're gonna go sit down, and he just kind of like stared at me. So I'm like, come on. So I like guided him over. His dad usually watches. I'm not sure if his dad is like fluent in English and Spanish, but I explained the situation to him as best as I could. And then his dad gave him like that dad look, like you're in trouble.
Yeah. So you did the right thing. That's exactly what I would have done.
Okay.
Tanner had a comment.
I think when you're, especially for lead instructors, when you're setting up the drill, you need to make it very clear what we're doing and then set the consequences. Like it says, weapons are for training, and then don't hit your partner. Carl taught me this when we were running laps. Don't tell them to not run slow. Tell them to run faster. Because then there isn't like...
And that's that extracting the positive expectation from them. So I don't want your whole pre-frame for your drill to be, we're not hitting each other, we're not stabbing. Like, that's not the point of this. We want to have fun. We want to use the weapons. Let's move on to the next slide. Comment while we're moving.
I was just going to say, usually what I like to do in class is I love just callbacks. You have them go and yell out, 1 spot back. We turn to face our partner and yell 1 spot back. And then we make everybody yell in the air. So if we're practicing with our partner as a reference, I always say the word reference. We use our partner as a reference. I say in the air, and then we practice all of our moves in the air.
Okay, that's a very, very fast way to set an expectation.
Yes.
I really like that. Okay, scenario. It's Nunchuck Day in Black Belt Club. What steps do we need to take to ensure a well-behaved class? Jaden, what do you think? Just talk loud as we pass it.
I think that a really good way to make sure the class is behaving well is to be like, hey, we're working with nunchucks today. These weapons take a lot of focus and control, so we don't hit ourselves and we don't hit other people. I'm just pre-framing with, hey, this you get to do this because we're trusting you to be behaved.
Yeah. Jaden.
I would take it earlier that when the class is sitting there, that's going to set the tone for the class.
Hey,
so
there's a lot. I want to start from before class even starts and walk me through as that class progresses in this scenario, like you said.
So they're sitting there. You see a little Timmy hitting his brother with his nunchucks, right? You say, hey, these are weapons. We don't hit each other. If you do that again, we're going to separate you, right? Making sure that everyone's sitting nice and quietly. They're watching the class and a good example. That's like step 1 in my book.
Yeah. So the pre-class where they're sitting on the edge of the mat, you as one of the instructors gets to walk over and you have that like 10-second conversation with them. The content of that conversation in large part is going to set up the initial behavior in class, right? So let's set it up correctly. So for Nunchuck class, how would you do that? Most of my class is here now. Everyone's got their Nunchuck. We're sitting on the side of the mat. Can someone give me an example of that?
Even when we're sitting on the edge of the mat, we're doing our little mat chat. It happens more in Kaysville than anywhere else. We always have those new kids that are a little bit nervous, and sometimes those nervous kids are a little bit of goofballs, and they like to mess around with the weapon. So I like to start off by easing their worries by going from the very basics. So teaching them where they need to hold their weapon and how to control it. So I always use this phrase, where my thumb goes, my chuck goes, and just starting it from there so they have like the ease of mind of like.
Okay. So he has a little conversation about how he's going to start class. What else could you include in your pre-class mat chat? Okay. If you know that certain special someone is coming to class, what do you definitely include in your mat chat?
Introduce them. Focus.
Okay. Remember, we're going to stay focused. We're going to control ourselves. And you're going to give the one kid who has the special plan little eyeballs and say, we're going to do this today and it's going to be awesome. And you're going to stay focused. Right? Then what? We've done the warm-up. We're in class. We're about to start swinging our nunchucks. What do?
Make sure you're on your dot.
Okay, we space them out correctly. We set an expectation of where we're at. What else?
You can rephrase. We're staying focused. These are weapons. We gotta make sure that we're being respectful.
Yeah. Okay. However you want to set that up, in part as part of your demonstration of whatever the technique is, you make sure they understand we're not hitting our neighbor. We're going to keep it under control. We're doing the drill now, and it's going pretty well, but little Susie in the back corner has decided it's more fun to go over here and hit her sister. What are we doing now? How do we fix this scenario?
Separate them right there, right then.
Okay, if it's my boys, first thing you know, Bentley and Patton should what? Not be next to each other, ever, for any reason. Patton will try and murder his older brother. Okay, so you separate them. And really, do you need to have a whole big conversation about that one?
No.
Girls, we got to keep our hands to ourselves. You guys can't be next to each other. Please don't be next to each other. And poof, you're done. 3 seconds, we're finished. Okay, we're still going, and now it's getting a little complicated, and so we're losing some of the students. That we're starting to lose focus. What do we do? Okay, you could split them into groups. What else?
Middle and down.
Okay, what do you mean?
So if they are really grasping the concept or they've done it 1,000 times, thumbs up. If they're kind of struggling with it, thumbs middle, and thumbs down if they're really not understanding it. Thumbs middle and thumbs down go into one group with an instructor, and then there's another instructor that goes and moves on with either the next concept or.
Okay, that's a great idea. What else can you do?
Change the drill, change partners.
Disguise the repetition, change the direction, move on to the next thing, whatever the class calls for. Okay. Now we have the kid that you've talked to 3 times about not hitting his neighbor with his nunchuck. And we're to the point where if we don't take action, what is going to happen? And 2, what kind of action do we take? So what are the risks in ignoring that behavior? Okay.
Well, if you ignore the behavior, then someone's going to get hurt or multiple people are going to start smacking each other with nunchucks.
Okay. Does that make sense? You turn one problem into multiple problems very, very quickly, especially in weapons classes, sparring classes. It can escalate very fast.
I would just say behavior allowed is behavior encouraged.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting that. Do not allow it, because that is passive acceptance of that behavior.
I think really important for you instructors is whoever is leading the class, don't be that focused person that is calling that out. Whoever's the assistant instructor that's helping out, you be the one that is pulling that student that is doing that distraction.
We talk about mat vision, right? Yep. Someone has to be in charge of the whole situation, while there are other people that are in charge of dealing with the individuals, right? And if that person gets sucked into the individual, what happens? 2 more kids start doing something they shouldn't do. Does that make sense? So you gotta make sure you differentiate the roles on the mat. That's excellent.
I was just gonna say, like, if the person who's supposed to be controlling the whole mat moves to control one person, that the rest of the class is missing out.
Yeah, you lose sight of the rest of the students who are trying. Jaden, Brandon, Jaden, I don't care. Brandon.
We're trying to set up a culture, and so if your culture isn't set up, I almost want to, because we talked about this earlier when you came to Bountiful, having that moment for the entire class, addressing the problem and dismissing the student, giving the consequence right there and then. That way it lets the entire class know in one moment that is not okay.
Okay.
We're going to keep moving.
So if it's gone really far, or it's to the point where now we're all looking around waiting for someone to get in trouble, because you know that classes do that. Have you watched that before, where you're like, uh-oh, Timmy's really bad right now? They're waiting for what?
The consequence.
They're waiting for you to take action. So what are some positive reinforcement techniques? If we're just starting to get out of hand, what are some positive things we can do?
Highlighting, spotlighting.
Okay.
This is the behavior I want to see.
So you spotlight the kids that are doing an awesome job. What else can you do? Okay, what else can you do?
I like to give them a challenge of, if we're having a hard time being focused, being like, I want to see how focused you can be for the next 5 minutes. I don't ever make it too long.
Give them an extra reason to
Right,
focus.
but be like, hey, do it for the next 5 minutes. If you can do that, we'll play your favorite game at the end of class, because they'll be like, I want to play red light, green light. I was like, deal, be focused for the next 10 minutes. And they're like, oh, yes, sir. And then it helps them stay a little bit more focused.
Okay. Classroom behavior management wise, though, now in that same scenario, what are the classroom behavior managements? We talked a lot about these just barely, but
One that can be kind of like a preemptive one is like, hey guys, this is going to be a really fun new technique for you that's going to challenge you and push you to learn even more. I want to see who can be the most focused and get this technique down the first try. That means we as a team got to be locked in 110%.
And again, that's this and this as well, right? Instead of discouraging bad behavior, we're driving good behavior constantly.
Mm-hmm.
We're constantly trying to push them to be better, do more reps, be faster, be stronger, whatever it is. Do we have another scenario? Okay. Any other comments? So before we end this, yeah.
Just going back to your classroom behavior management question. I'll just add back that what you said about classroom behavior management, it is extremely important that you make sure that you have those roles defined on the mat. Whoever is going to be those vision, whoever's got the whole vision for the mat, whoever's got those identified, going to pick out those people, you need to have that identified every single class, every single time, because if you don't, then it looks really bad when we're
scrambling. I don't like the scramble.
Yeah, we don't want to have that because then it takes away from the whole class, and it does exactly what you said, where everybody's like, okay, who's gonna pull Timmy off the mat?
Yeah, no, that should already be known.
I think one of the other ways to make sure the class is the way you want it to be is to be an example yourself and show what they're capable of doing through your own thing, and making sure that your energy is high enough to the level that you want it to. Because the less energy, the less involved you are, the more people think they can get away with things because you don't care.
Yeah, you're pulling it out of them by showing the same thing. So Jackson, go for it. And then very quickly, I want to kind of have you guys help me bullet point from start to finish in class what we would do to ensure that the class runs successfully and the problem solving techniques. And then let's do maybe here is the increasing level of severity with our discipline, so that you guys have a pretty good idea of what that would be.
So just adding on to like what Caden was saying about the new techniques, I think the new Black Belt Club Comma Form is doing that for a lot of students. Because yesterday, when I was waiting for bow staff to start and I was just sitting on the edge of the mat, I noticed that the comma class was a lot more focused than I usually see them. More engaged because they're learning a new form instead of something they learned 3 months ago.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Okay, so we set up the class with our mat chat. We pre-frame every activity. We call out good behavior while it's happening. We spot, do damage control as necessary. And then when we get to the disciplinary action, when we need to, walk me through how you would escalate that from warning to you're off the mat. What do you guys think? How is that scale?
Are you want like popcorn or somebody?
Go for it. I don't care. No, let's go for it. What do you think? Just shout it out.
I start with just a verbal warning. It's like, hey man, that's way too much power, or whatever it is. You should be careful here. Try not to do that again. And then,
okay. So you've given them a warning. Now what?
And with that warning, I also explain why the warning is being given. Yeah. We have way too much power that's going to hurt our partner, and that's not okay. And then we set an expectation. If this keeps going on, you're going to end up sitting off the mat if this behavior continues.
And that was the thing I was going to add. At this point, we definitely need to make sure they understand what the consequence will be, right? First time. Then what? Do they get a second warning?
I would say, yeah. I would say, hey, we talked about this. You're hitting with way too much power. You got to tone it back. Or, again, you will be off the mat next time.
Okay. Are there scenarios where a second warning is not appropriate?
Yes.
Could too much power be one of those scenarios?
Yes.
It could. Okay. So you've given them a second warning, or we just gave someone a bloody nose. Now what?
I say before kicking them off the mat, and say, like, you're going to go sit there for like 2 minutes, right? Just a small break. Next time, though, you're going to be out for the whole drill.
Yeah, and the conversation you have with them is going to depend on what just occurred. Is it zigzagging through the bags, and are they 9 years old? Or are they 14 and they just socked someone so hard they're bleeding, right? There's a difference. Do you see what I'm saying?
Also, don't say 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Point your clock, tell them exactly what time. When that clock says 3:27, you can be back out on the mat.
Okay.
Until then, I need you to sit here and think about it.
Okay. There are some kids this doesn't work very well for. Do you have the kid who then turns it into playtime on the punching bag? What are some alternate disciplinary actions we can take.
Sometimes if it's a younger kid, most of the time their parents are going to be there. You're going to sit with mom, and I usually explain, hey mom, we're working on our discipline, and here's what happened, and this is the rule we set, and whatever. And now mom sees the value of, oh wow, yeah, okay, yeah, he's learning discipline.
Good. Tanner.
Is it harder to stick them with a new, very disciplined partner or with a leadership team?
Okay, that helps if you have that wild kid who's out of control. Put him with leadership team. They're not going to put up with it, right?
My thing was exactly what Nate said, and it's going to be age dependent.
Very much.
If the parents are there, I'd say with the second warning, after you warn the kid, go to the parent and say, kid's on the second warning. If it happens again, we are going to come sit with you, and this is why.
Exactly. Because the parents are definitely going to help with that scenario, especially with younger kids.
I kind of have a ramping up level of consequences that happen of first time, or not first a time, but first time we need like an actual consequence besides just a warning. It's you sit out for a short amount of time. Second time, if it happens like the following class and the problem hasn't behaved, you're sitting out and you're doing push-ups, right? Or if the third time it happens, all right, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk with mom and dad and we're going to figure out what the heck's going on. If it's like a fourth time in a row, then the belt gets taken away. But this isn't like one class, all of that happens, all of a sudden their belt's gone. It's like 4 consecutive classes. You were misbehaving, you were hitting too hard, you were
whatever the case
running and screaming or whatever the case may be. And then that ramps up between classes because some kids don't fix it after just one class.
Most kids, if we're in the, we've been warned twice and have already sat out, we're probably in the, this is going to be a longer journey than that, right?
Well, and even like if it gets so bad, you're like, hey, I seriously need you to step off the mat. And they're like, we have some kiddos who just lay there and like, I'm not getting off the mat, being comfortable and confident enough to literally pick the kiddo up and go take it like him to his mom and explain why though. Like, don't just like throw them at the parents, but explain why and be like, once you're ready, you come back on the mat, but I cannot have you do this, A, B, and Z.
Yeah. And at this point, parents should have been talked to multiple times, right?
Yeah. Something that McKay had to really get me good at was what I like to refer to as suitcasing children. If there's one student who's like genuinely a problem and they're consistently a problem in class, you just suitcase them by the belt and by the back of the gi. You carry them over to mom and dad. You sit them down. And you have a conversation with the student right next to mom and dad of what is going on, but being willing to, if it's a unsafe situation, extricate the child.
Yeah, get them off the mat. Okay, any other comments? I just want to make sure that you guys understand the importance of this. You cannot leave negative behavior on the mat because negative behavior will kill the mat faster than a lack of positive behavior. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So a little bit of negative behavior poisons stuff much faster. It's the whole a negative times any positive is still a negative. So we can sap the energy out of a wonderful class very quickly with one naughty child, one aggressive child, one very verbal, interrupting child. Does that make sense? So this is something that I want to work on because you guys see it from the mat's point of view. Just a second, Jaden. But the parents see a very different perspective and they see how is class, because they're playing on their phone. They look up and if there's a kid over here doing the worm and another one over here bouncing his head off the window, like, are you even controlling this class? What is going on? That's what they see. And then they go back to their phone and go, man, this is ridiculous. I'm not sure I like this. Does that make sense? They see these little tiny snapshots. And if in that snapshot, you have this wild circus going on, that's the only view. And then they go back and tell husband, hey, karate was weird today. They were out of control. The kids weren't paying attention. It didn't seem like the instructors had control of the class. How are we supposed to teach respect and discipline if class seems out of control? Remember, perception is as important as the reality. And so for our parents, perceiving that class is calm, you're calm, the students are respectful, is what they're paying for. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. Jaden?
Yeah. Thanks. Kind of going back to more of that discipline, though, I just wanted to add that I think it's important to leave the student after having that talk with them about discipline on more or less of a high note, because you don't want them resenting you or like starting to, avoid you or something weird like that. Like, hey, like this is unacceptable. Don't do this. But you know what? Let's come back better
and then we can have fun in class again, right? So giving them that little
and helping them find a win once they're back on the mat is super important.
Yeah,
I agree. Caden.
I was just gonna say that could be a really fun leadership team or business systems drill where essentially you're running a class and it's working on class management. Somebody says freeze, everybody in the room freezes, and an outside person has to look at how the class looks in that freeze frame, and kind of get a basis of what the class management is. That way, we're kind of working on that perpetual, making sure class is running smoothly.
I agree. Michael, I think you're next.
So I had an odd situation last week in swords. I don't know what it is about swords and Masters Club, but kids just think it's like free game for going and smacking each other with their swords or pretending to. So I had warned 6 different kids in one Masters Club class about not hitting each other. I don't know if it's spread but it was at different times during the class. And I had to sit the entire class down at the end, and I let them know their expectations, and I let them know that they are holding a sword, and if a parent came in that did not do Masters Club, because there's other classes right after that, if a parent comes in and sees someone attack another kid with a sword, they don't know that sword's not sharp. They don't know what that's going to look like. So I basically told an entire Masters Club class, if I see that again, there's not going to be a warning. You guys we're going to sit down. We're going to have a conversation with your parents.
That's okay.
Okay. I just wanted to get.
I promise I'm meaner when I'm on the mat than any of you guys are.
Okay.
I'll be honest.
All right.
If you've taken classes from me, you know that's the case. I have a very high expectation of how you behave in my class. Do we still have fun? I would like to think so. Maybe not. But like, I don't want the baloney to take time out of when we could be training.
Yeah.
That's at the end of the day what I want. Oh, Cassie, I'm sorry.
Cassie here.
And maybe we already kind of covered this, but what is your preference on handling it from the parent perspective, who maybe their child has been on the receiving end of someone else's bad behavior, and now said child does not want to participate in that class or with that other student because they have been the recipient of
This goes back to our last conversation. We would like to know about that. Honestly, we're not all seeing, right? And so kids get away with stuff.
But who do we direct?
I would talk to the instructor right then and there. I would say, hey, let's go talk to Michael if he's the one running that class. Let's go talk to Michael and let's see if we can resolve this.
Okay.
I would do it. I don't like anything to fester. Don't make it wait. Is that fair? Okay, so anything you can address immediately goes better. So it doesn't have time to be blown out of proportion or morph into something it wasn't.
Or we just direct them to the lead instructor.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Have any of you guys seen the My Martial Arts Goals 4 paper? No, okay.
Yes,
I made this paper a while back, but it has a little thing. My martial arts goals, and there's like goals at home karate school, and I use this all the time at bad behavior in class or at home, and I make them write their like goals down on it, and I make them sign it, and I usually involve the parent. This is usually okay, 3 strikes you're out. I've talked to the parent. Mom's like, hey, look, we need to sit and talk. It wouldn't be like the one time in class that they act up, but I've seen really good stuff because then they'll come up with ideas of, man, if I am very good, then I get a treat from the treat box. I went to the dollar store and spent like $20 on a bunch of little toys, and it's in a toy box. And I go, do you want a special treat, dude? If you set a goal on this paper and you are good, then you have this reward.
You're motivating good behavior rather than driving out bad behavior. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Tanner, and then we're gonna
it's in
probably
the
wrap it
drive
up.
if you guys want it.
I think this is why it's so important to have a good student creed and to like really make a big deal of that, because then it's like, this is what we're doing. We're all saying it together. This is the expectation. And then you kind of, the expectation is already set at the beginning of class. You don't have to take as much time going over.
It starts to set the right behavior. You're right. That's why we say it at the start of class. Okay. Any questions? I feel very strongly from a parent's point of view that we need to work on, I don't want to say stamping out the problems, but that's what stamping out these problems before they become bigger, because I don't want it to become this cancerous thing where, well, if every time Susie comes to class, she gets to flop around on the floor, You know, how do we hold everyone else accountable? Does that make sense? I don't want those things to spread. And now it's 3 kids flopping around on the floor. And when you get mad at the other kid who normally doesn't do it, well, why doesn't Susie get yelled at? Because she does it every freaking day. That kind of stuff bothers our parents more than you think. And we need to make sure that we are presenting the right image to our parents. But more importantly than that, that we are holding the kids to the right expectations so they can actually grow. Is that fair? Okay. Thank you very much. This is something we're going to continue to train. Tuesday meetings and some of our leadership team will be on this topic. All right. Grab a drink of water. We have another one. Yeah. Sorry. We talked too long. Take a break if you need to. If not, I don't know. Let's go.